This is WMNF Tampa, and this is your host Samar Jarrah. My co-host Ahmed and I will be talking to you live from the studios here in Tampa. Listen to this music by the late Palestinian singer Reem Al-Banna. This is True Talk.
حتى بساط المسجد وباع الكنيسة فهي من أملاكه وباع المؤذن في المزاد الأسود واطفئ ذبانات النجوم فإنها ستضيء درب التائه المتشرد حتى يتامانا أبوهم غائب صادر يتامانا إذن يا سيدي لا تعتذر من قال أنك ظالم لا تنفعل من قال أنك معتدي حررت حتى السائمات غداة أن أعطيت أبراهام حقل محمد
Welcome back to True Talk. This is your host Samar Jarrah. My co-host Ahmed Bedier is on the phone with me. Hello Ahmed, how are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Hi Samar. I'm actually over Zoom.
Okay.
I'm not using the phones anymore.
Yes, I keep saying old words, like I told Frank, our assistant here, prepare Skype, and he says Skype. Do you mean Zoom? And then now I'm saying phone, but it's Zoom. Ahmed, I hope you feel better. I know you are under the weather. I hope it's not COVID, because there is COVID around, actually. I know people who have it. So
I don't think it's, I don't know, I didn't get tested, but I'm quarantined at home.
Okay.
But I think it's, I'm at the end of it, so.
Okay. I'm sure you have heard the very sad news about the passing of Rob Leroy, and you and I have a very, very, very long history with him. Actually, he's the one who introduced me to you, or introduced you to me. I have never met you before. I did not even know you existed. I'm not sure, but I remember when I met Rob and he told me that you can do a radio show, and I said, no way, I can't do it by myself. And he said, I have the perfect match for you. And I have no idea how he knew that you are the perfect match for me, Ahmed. Do you remember how he...
Well, it's true that Rob Leroy, the media icon of Tampa, was our matchmaker. He brought us together, despite the fact, we're both Muslim, we're both Arab, but we didn't know each other. It's not just like all Muslims and Arab know each other locally. And I did not know of you. I didn't hear of you before, but he introduced us to each other, and he suggested, I had approached Rob at some point, or the news, the station, to say, you know what, we need to have a voice on the station for our community and our perspective, especially with all the drumbeats beating to the war in Iraq and what was happening, the invasion of Afghanistan and post 9/11, and all the media was very hostile against Muslims. And there was all this Islamophobia and misinformation and smears. It was really bad. And we thought that, there's no counter to what's being said. They would have people talking and discussing and debating Islam on the mainstream media, and none of them would be Muslim. And it was all negative. And this was creating a climate of anti-Muslim climate. Hate crimes were on the rise. Discrimination was on the rise. People were students were being bullied in school. Muslims were getting fired from their jobs. We're talking about other Americans, and Muslims were being seen as some sort of foreign fifth element that doesn't belong in America. And that was the argument, that was the pitch that we had made to Rob. And he thought you would be great at this. So he introduced us, and the rest is history. We've been together since, now it's been...
more than 20 years, I think, Ahmed.
Yeah, more than 20 years, 22 years. But Rob got us together. I guess I must have met him. He passed away at 70. We must have met him when he's like 46, 47. Mm-hmm. He was a news director at WMNF. And had a lot of energy. He would get to the station so early in the morning, one of the first people there, because he has to prepare for the news. And he mentored us on how to do radio. And
actually, at the beginning, Ahmed, we didn't know how to run the board, and it was Rob who will almost all the time we would be taping the show. And at the beginning, it was once every 2 weeks because he wanted to see how the reaction was. And I remember he would be running the board for us. He never interfered or uttered a word or did anything or told us what to do or who not to interview, nothing. And he just would be sitting there just running the board. And I think after 3 months, the reaction has been very positive, and you learned, of course, how to do the board immediately, and we started to do it live. However, there was a lot of heat coming. If you want to talk about that.
Right. Like you were saying, the response was overwhelmingly positive, and there was a lot of people that were calling in, asking questions, engaging. But there was one, a vocal minority, a vocal small group that were really angry to be on the air. Well, I guess a couple of groups. One of them are these anti-Muslim kind of right-wing Christians that that thought Islam was some sort of evil, cult and has no business being in America. The other group, of course, is the pro-Israel group that thought somehow our presence on the air would be a threat to the narrative on Israel. And the station came under some heat when the show started becoming popular.
Do you remember the letter that came? Do you remember the letter?
The station has received many letters, and I remember we received many letters. Some of the letters were threatening, and some of the letters to the station were very critical and threatening to pull funding, etc. But which letter are you referring to?
I am referring to the first letter that said, Assalamu alaikum. We are so happy that our brother Ahmed and our sister Samar are in now, and blah 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 blah.
Oh yeah, this fake letter.
And then there will be an orange cloud soon 7 miles from WMNF. And then the way they said at the end, not Salaam Alaikum, but another Muslim greeting, that the minute I saw that, I realized this is somebody who doesn't have a clue, doesn't know Arabic, doesn't know anything about Islam, how we greet or say bye or goodbye. But it prompted the FBI to call both of us, if you remember, to talk to us, because I guess 7 miles from here is the what is it called, the base, the military base. MacDill.
MacDill Air Force Base.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it wasn't, it's still a scary thing. But this was at a time, this was a tactic that was being used back then to try to do these hoax letters and things and try to somehow pretend, they pretend that it's being sent by a Muslim. But it's obvious once you actually look at the writings and stuff that no Muslim actually sent that. Similarly, after 9/11, those horrific attacks, there was the anthrax scare, if you remember, where they were sending these white powder to public officials and members of Congress and others, and they would include these little notes trying to pretend that that they're somehow Muslims that are sending it, and they would write things like Allahu Akbar or and at the end it was a misdirection, somebody trying to put the blame somehow on Muslims and put them on under the microscope and the spotlight. But there were other situations where we received, letters or comments that says, death threats. One
very
that said,
clear.
A couple of very clear ones. One threatening to take us out in the parking lot. And Rob was always concerned about that, but he always had our back,
Remember, sorry, Ahmed, to interrupt, but I just vividly remember that for 3 months he would ask us to text him when we're arriving. So he would be at the parking lot. And then when we leave, he would take both of us to our cars. He didn't care that he might be shot.
Right. Well, I mean, he was just thought his presence would be a deterrent, but that's the kind of person he was. He was, concerned for others. He was concerned about us, and he didn't interfere. He gave us editorial freedom, and he would give us some, guidance here and there. And despite the pressure that he came under, even at the end, and I know in some of these, people remembering Rob, they didn't mention this, but, towards the end when he left the station, there were groups on the outside trying to accuse him of anti-Semitism, and the station of anti-Semitism trying to pull this anti-Semitism card because somehow the station allows us to be on the air and to criticize Israel. And, for the millionth time, us criticizing Israel has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Us criticizing Israel, Netanyahu, his government, and the fascists there has nothing to do with the great religion of Judaism. If anything, it's those fascists that are doing a disservice to Judaism. They're dishonoring it. They're not living up to the values of Judaism and what the Torah and the tenets of that faith. Most of those individuals, anyway, they're not religious that are doing. Of course, no real religious person would carry out massacres that are being carried out in Gaza. So this idea that somehow they would constantly criticize us and try to pull the anti-Semitism card, which it normally would scare managers and radio stations and get them to capitulate, and they don't want to have this stigma or controversy, and they would either fire the host or suspend or whatever. But over and over, the station stood by us because they'd review the tapes and they would see that it's not anti-Semitic. We're talking about what the Israeli government is actually doing. And what they're doing is an apartheid on the Palestinians. And I think especially, over time, Rob understood that. And he thought that our voice is important to have on the air. And I remember one time, the matter became so heated in the community that he took it upon himself to organize a town hall meeting.
Yeah, I remember.
At the University of Tampa. They booked this big hall in the historic building there at the University of Tampa in downtown, and he moderated this town hall, and it was two sides there. It was like the local pro-Israel side and, the pro-Palestine side. Some of them a lot of them happened to be from the Jewish community on the other side, and we're facing each other, two different aisles, and we're having a dialogue. Of course, it was heated. Things were, being tossed around, but Rob was able to, keep focused and keep the discussion focused on the topic at hand. That's the kind of person that, Rob Lorai was. And it's really sad that our community has lost him. And because he contributes so much to media and just overall in the community. I mean, he was out to things, even though he's a news director, but he would go to different events. And when sometimes I even asked him to moderate events for us, he would come and moderate, whether it's at USF or some of the community activities. So he was just a great guy to have. And I'm really glad that we got to know him.
Me too, and I'm very sorry we didn't get a chance to see him before his passing. And I remember the last communication with him was via text message about the American Palestinian from my hometown who was murdered by settlers, and he was just making sure if I knew him or not. And really, I wanted to send him a text and say, let's meet for lunch. But you and I were traveling. But I remember, Ahmed, very vividly, and people know that our show also talks about the Arab regimes, and we are extremely critical of them. We talk to rabbis, we talk to Jewish people, Muslims, imams. We've played the Quran, and people were like, oh my gosh, we've never heard it before. We spoke about the Eid, we spoke about Muslim holidays, we talked about novels and books and Pakistan and India and Afghanistan. So our show is not really concentrated on Palestine, but whenever there is a war, we talk about it. I remember one time, Ahmed, there was many years ago raids on Lebanon, and there were many American Lebanese trapped there, and the U.S. would not send ships to evacuate them the way the U.S. would do, for instance, if something happens in the Caribbean or Latin America or elsewhere. And some of the people trapped were Americans from Tampa. And you spoke to them. I don't want to mention the name out of privacy. And then we talked to the Red Cross, and all hell broke loose. Like, you and I were thinking, what did we do wrong? Like, what was wrong with talking to an American trapped in Lebanon and talking to the Red Cross in Lebanon?
Right. Well, because the problem is that the people that they don't want these stories to get out. They don't want this narrative to be out there. There's a narrative that the pro-Israel apartheid regime side that wants to keep pushed out there, that Israel is this victim that's surrounded, that's in an area, a tiny country that's surrounded by bloodthirsty Arabs that want to annihilate them and remove them off the face of the earth merely because they're Jewish, for no other reason. And that's the narrative that they want to keep pushing out there. They don't want this other narrative that, Americans are in Lebanon and they're stuck in there being bombed by Israel using American weapons. And that's the story. Those are the stories we're bringing. I remember it was the person we had on the air is a local teacher from Tampa that was stuck there. And this was in 2006 during the Israel war on Lebanon. And, eventually, because of pressure, the United States did send ships and they did evacuate Americans that were there, that were on their summer holidays or whatever. So this has been the ongoing thing. And this is one of the reasons why you and I continue to do this show, because we feel like this narrative needs to be out there. And we're not going to back down. We're going to keep pushing, and we're going to brush off and respond to the people that say this is anti-Semitism. No, we're anti-apartheid. We're anti-genocide. We're anti-ethnic cleansing. And we want people to live and coexist in peace. And that includes Jews and Arabs. They should be able to coexist. Jews and Palestinians. They've already, before the establishment of the State of Israel, they actually did coexist and live in peace for centuries. And now it's really on the Israeli side that they don't want any possibility of a Palestinian state. This is not something new. I think from the beginning of the establishment of the state of Israel, they never intended on ever having a Palestinian state next to them. If you look at their writings, the founding fathers of Israel, they knew this all along, and they knew, and they planned and said that they would need to do ethnic cleansing in order to replace the people that lived on those lands, and that's what they're doing. And then just today, they announced that Israel is going to move forward with this building, thousands of settlements in what's called the E1 settlement area just outside of Jerusalem, which would effectively cut the West Bank, the Palestinian land, in half, making a Palestinian state impossible. This has been on the books for 20 years. This is not when Smorch, Ben-Gvir, and others are coming along and saying this now. They've been planning this for 20 years. And it's because of resistance from the United States and others, but now they're moving forward with it. So it's always been the plan to never have a Palestinian state. And they've just been implementing it regardless. So that's why when they say Netanyahu is so evil, it's not only Netanyahu. It's been the policy of the Israeli government, regardless if it's Netanyahu or others all along, to not have a Palestinian state.
Ahmed, let me just remind our listeners that this is True Talk on WMNF, and my co-host Ahmed and myself, Samar, are talking about Rob Leroy, who was the news director here at WMNF, an icon in Tampa and elsewhere. And he's the one who introduced me to Ahmed and introduced Ahmed to me. And this is how we ended up with this show that has been going on for 22 years, thanks to all of you listeners and your support and the financial support that we get. And actually, Ahmed, I do have a caller from Sarasota who wants to talk to Mike. So let me go to Mike in Sarasota and see what he has to say. Go ahead, Mike, you're on the air.
Thank you for taking my call. And I would like to extend my sincere condolences for the passing of Rob Leroy. He was truly a giant of media in Florida. I would like to mention that Rob Leroy was fired from WMNF and actually deplatformed twice. And both times it was at the instigation of prominent local Zionist activists. The first time it was Craig Kopp, who came in as general manager and fired Rob. And then, thankfully, the WMNF listenership reacted in support of Rob. And it turned out, and one of the great things in history, that Craig Kopp got fired. So that was wonderful. And I'm proud to say I was part of that effort to see him go. The second time that Rob Leroy got deplatformed, and this is all as part of the Zionist effort to manipulate the American media. The second time Robert Leroy got deplatformed and fired was at the instigation of Simon from Lakeland, who, and you know the story better than I do, but he came up with these scurrilous charges that Robert Leroy was some kind of bigot. And to WMNF's everlasting shame, the board, and trying to be sensitive, kind of went along with it and fired Rob from the WMNF newsroom. So what I'm getting at, my final point here, is that what I would like to see as a way to honor the memory of Rob Leroy is let's deplatform the deplatformers. And what I would like, and I'm not asking you to support this, but I would like to ask all WMF listeners to write to WUSF or get in contact with WUSF and mention that Craig Kopp, who's now an announcer on WUSF, let's express our discomfort that we have a Zionist in the newsroom of WUSF. And then in terms of for WMNF, let's deplatform Simon from Lakeland, who calls into WMNF all the time. And I seriously believe he's part of the Hasbro effort. And by the way, let me finish with one thing. Mm-hmm. I'm referring to these as two separate incidents, but it would, I believe, I don't have any evidence for this, I believe that Kopp and Simon from Lakeland may have been working together this whole time.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate what you have to say about Rob, but really, I am not endorsing anything at the moment. I want to keep this about Rob and his legacy. And I want to go to Ahmed now and really discuss the most important thing, which is the remember when we were covering the story of Sami Larian, and you were able to bring Nahla to the show, and that was really it used to scare me when you used to do that. And actually in my book in Arabic I wrote about how courageous you were to bring something so scary and so dangerous, and to bring Nahla to the studio. And I think there was a director, some foreign director, who wanted to do a documentary, and there was a documentary, and eventually Sami Larian was not found guilty. He was released eventually. I mean, there was a technicality, but do you remember those days? Those were very, very, very really it was a scary times for us.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've been through a lot, I guess, locally with all of this. Yeah, so I've never met, before. I mean, other than when I started doing the show, I was the director of a civil rights organization, a Muslim civil rights organization, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. I was also basically the founder in Tampa to start the chapter here. I thought it was needed to defend Muslims' rights because so many people were being discriminated against, so many people were being targeted by law enforcement. And one of those people was Sami Larian. And I had never met him or his family before his arrest. And I didn't really know them. So, but because of my role, my job, to defend people's rights and that they should have the right to due process, I started advocating for that. And I got to know Nahla, which is the wife of
Sami.
The wife of Sami, which, turned out she was a really nice woman. She was courageous. She was the one that was courageous. She was facing all of this, but she wasn't giving up. It wasn't like just some helpless, like the stereotype that people have about Arab women, that somehow they're just silent and helpless and, they're, subjugated by the men or subordinate to the men. This was, her husband was in jail and she's going around lobbying and talking and speaking at forums and raising money for his defense and going everywhere. I was really impressed by her. And when I heard that, there's this documentary happening, and this was actually when we had her on was after the verdict came out. When in that verdict, those that are not familiar with the case, you can look up, Google USA versus Sami Larian and to read up on the case. But the U.S. government had charged Sami Larian and 3 other people who they said were his co-conspirators in a terrorism cell of over 200 charges, 200 felony charges of like terrorism-related charges. And after a 6-month trial, the jury came back in Tampa, a federal jury, with not a single guilty verdict, which shocked the entire, the whole United States, because the Attorney General of the U.S., the federal government, the FBI was saying this is like the worst, most evil person, in America. And a jury looked at the evidence and said, and the evidence didn't support that. So there wasn't a single guilty verdict. What happened was that the jury acquitted 2 of the defendants completely. And they kept deliberating, and as they got closer to acquitting the other 2, they ended up stopping for whatever reason. Some people say the judge interfered or whatever, and didn't let them continue deliberating. But they basically did not reach a verdict on maybe 8 charges for Sami Larian, and some other charges, equal number of charges for his co-defendant Hatem. And when that happens, the government can retry those individuals on those charges. You cannot get retried on charges that you've been acquitted of, but charges where a jury did not reach a verdict, the federal government can take you to court again. And I guess it would have been very costly, etc. They ended up doing a plea deal, so that way he can leave the country, which turned into another 10-year or 8-year ordeal where he didn't actually leave. They didn't honor the plea deal, etc., etc. So it's a different story, but I think it was 2007 that the film came out. He was acquitted in 2006 or 2005, 2006. But the documentary, which was done by a director from Norway, came out, and that's one of the reasons why we had her come to the station to talk about it. And we actually we organized a screening, a premiere of the film
Tampa
at the Tampa
Theater
downtown.
It was packed. It was like
it was
shocking.
sold out.
Yeah,
sold out. And Nahla came and her children, and there was a director
and the jury.
And there was a conversation. One of the members of the jury was
remember?
There. That's right.
And he's the one who. What was like? Why was his presence so important? Remind me. Is he the one?
I mean, he was one of the jurors because he was a juror who said there was no evidence. His name was, I think his name was Ron.
Yeah, he never heard of Palestine. He never heard of Samar.
Yeah,
he never heard of this whole conflict in his absolute life.
Yeah. But the jury also included a Jewish woman that also found the defendants not guilty. And they basically at the end, when you talk to the jury members that did speak to the media, that there was only 2 members of the jury that were hung up. Everyone else thought they should be acquitted on everything, that there was no evidence to support any of the charges. But I remember, Rob Lorai came to the and was there. I think he was one of the speakers at the screening. At the event. He might have moderated some of the conversations. But it was sold out, and again, that's what was happening here. But this angered so many people because it was these very few extremely pro-Zionist, just very hardline pro-Israel individuals that were going after people like Samuel Aryan and making all these accusations. And it wasn't until after 9/11 that he was arrested because they had looked at some of these allegations before 9/11, and the U.S. government didn't pursue him. But it was after 9/11 that they changed course. But again, they were angry that he somehow got away. But the reality is the evidence didn't support the allegations that were being made. But there was when you say people were afraid, I think people were afraid. That was the intended purpose. They were trying to intimidate people in the community by making an example of Nahla and her family and Sammy and others. And a lot of people were afraid. They didn't want to be associated. They don't, and that sends fear throughout the community. People don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get, to be under scrutiny. They don't want the FBI to come visit them. So they think that if they just stay quiet and stay out of the way, that somehow they'll be left alone. But the reality is if you don't stand up for the rights of other people, at some point it's going to be your turn. They're going to come after you. So you have to speak up for the rights of others, especially when it comes to issues of justice and incarceration and the right to free speech. And a lot of those things are under threat now again today.
Yeah, I think, you and I were traveling, and this is the first time that both you and I travel at the same time. I was gone for 5 weeks. I think you were gone for 6 weeks. So many things happened. Anything in particular that made you alarmed, like maybe really the freedom of speech, which is the most beautiful thing, I think, in America? I mean, there are many beautiful things, but for you and I, who come from, different parts of the world, we cherish this very much. We cherish this station and this radio show and the ability to talk freely without being afraid. Did you feel in the past 6 weeks when you are outside the country and looking in and zooming into America that something is going on or you and I are too alarmed or cautious, or
No,
what?
I mean, that's obviously, there are things going on that are frightening as far as civil liberties, people's rights, separation of powers, historical norms when it comes to the democratic system that we have in this country that are being just shattered. And law enforcement is being weaponized to target political opponents. It's happening now, on mass scale. And that's concerning. Like right now, with Zoran Mamdani winning the primary in New York, it's freaking out the establishment, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. It's not just the Republicans that are outraged about it. It's mostly the Democrats. Because, New York, you're always going to have a Democratic mayor. But you have the Democratic establishment there trying to conspire to try to somehow, kick him out, disqualify him, find a way, raise, hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure he loses. Then you have the White House saying somehow that, to see if they can, how to remove him.
Strip him, or even from his
strip him of power,
citizenship.
or strip him from citizenship. Like this is not playing by the rules, So if you don't like the results of an election, you're just going to do all these other illegal things. This is not what America's about. America, and I remember a long time ago, a member of Congress had said, and I heard him say this, saying that Congress is an alternative to violence. Congress is an alternative to violence. When they didn't have Congress, when it doesn't work, they had the Civil War in this country. So our political system, if it doesn't exist, it'll be just violence. Wow. That's how people will settle, their things. They'll be militias. And part of that political process is that when somebody else wins the election is that you honor and you say, you know what, I'm going to wait for the next election and then it'll be my turn. But now you have a situation in this country where people don't want to win. They don't want to have fair elections, or they want to rig the elections, or you see what's happening in Texas with the attempts to redistrict and do gerrymandering, which would mean that somehow in Texas they would gain 5 more seats in the Congress for Republicans, because it's so close between the Democrats and the Republicans for control of the House that they want to guarantee that Republicans will continue, and they know that in the midterm that people are going to be coming out against Trump and against the Republican Party. So they want to have this type of 5-seat, cushion. And the members from there, the Democrats are, leaving the state to try to avoid it. And in California, Governor Newsom is trying to do redistricting there to try to get 5 seats extra as to offset for what Texas is trying to do. So you have all these kind of things that are moving between the two parties, which if this all collapses and they keep playing these games, it might turn violent. And you see that the president is weaponizing the military to go into Washington, D.C. and potentially other cities. That's not the America that you and I, knew, and most people don't know. I think not enough people are aware or as concerned or alarmed. A few people are alarmed, but not enough. And the media is kind of giving a pass, kind of a wait and see approach. Like, what is Trump trying to do? Well, it's pretty obvious what's happening here. You don't want to get to a point where it's too late, that you just keep watching it. And, Pam Bondi, an attorney general, is using their powers to go after specific political opponents or to eliminate specific people. So this is all concerning. This is the kind of stuff that you see happening in Russia, in other countries that have authoritarian regimes. But the United States, in the past, despite, there is corruption here and there are the billionaires, but it's not like it is now, where you just basically in your face do what you want and you're somehow above the law.
One more thing, Ahmed, is the funding of NPR and WMNF. I mean, they talk about it all the time, but I didn't expect it to actually happen. But thank God that listeners, I'm sure if you knew that, but donated so generously to WMNF, way more than what was expected and wanted. But how can you sustain freedom of speech and shows, like WMNF and NPR without funding?
Yeah.
It's
they want to
scary.
fund. They want to fund conservative media outlets, and they think somehow NPR is on the left side. And this
Although
current
I
administration,
don't like the wording when it says. They hardly say the word occupation or settlements.
no, they're not. They're not on the left. NPR is it's kind of in the middle. It's centrist. They're not really on the left. I don't know where they get this idea, but in their thinking is that anyone that's not on the right completely with them is somehow against them. The biggest test of free speech right now is Palestine. It's so obvious what's happening in Gaza. And if somehow, and that's the biggest thing that's under threat. Right now, they're basically saying they have a new memorandum or a new policy that has been issued by U.S. Customs citizenship agency that awards citizenship to people who apply after they've already been here for years, that they have to have these ideological litmus tests. And that before you basically have these tests to make sure that you can speak English, some history about the United States, some history or somehow that you
haven't joined a communist party or a Nazi party or involved
those
in
questions
terrorism.
are there. Yeah, but those questions are there. But mainly they kind of just make sure, because most people haven't been exposed to communist or terrorism. But most of the questions is like, okay, do you know who the president is? All this. But now they have specifically, they want to make sure that you stand with Israel or you're not against Israel.
On the citizenship test?
Not in the test, like in the conversation, the interview.
Oh, okay.
They want
my God.
It's kind of a policy. It's not a question in the questions on the test are like, who's the president, who's the vice president, who was the founding fathers, what's the Constitution, what's the Declaration of Independence, those kind of questions. How many states are there? But in the interview, because there's also an interview, they want to make sure that the person that they're admitting to become a citizen somehow fits a specific societal norm that and who defines what that is. And in their idea, the societal norm is like, you have this kind of vision of America that's aligned with them. So if you don't share that same vision, they don't want you here, because then you might vote for the Democrats. So they're politicizing so many things that are not supposed to be politicized. Before, the citizenship is just basically if you have family members here, you married somebody who's a citizen, or you have a parent or a mother or a brother, and you apply through this process, and that's why you're here. And that is the strongest criteria. And now they want to basically, and obviously some of that also is going to be try to keep America less diverse, less brown, more white, because they see the demographic shift. And that's not what America is about. And they're trying to re-envision what America is. They think somehow they're saying that America is this Christian nation, when the founding fathers were pretty clear that America is neither Christian or Jewish or any other religion. It's a-religious. There's no religious test. And in fact, freedom of religion is at the bedrock and the heart of what it means to be an American. But the people in power now and their ideology, they think that, no, it's Christian country and it should be predominantly Christian. And they have this number. They think that 80% of the nation should be Christian. If it's any less than that, then they lose some sort of the majority, and they won't have what's called like national cohesion, and there'll be conflict. So that's what's driving a lot of these policies, to keep America. So it's almost like they have a similar ideology like they have in Iran. They want to keep Iran, like a type of theocracy where it's, it's Muslim majority. So they're following in that, but under the guise that, this is a democracy. You can't have it both ways.
But Ahmed, and then again, this is True Talk WMNF. I have an interesting email, but let me. I feel things are changing very rapidly in America when it comes to understanding that there is a genocide going on. I'm not sure if you have seen 2 town hall meetings, one with 2 or 3 Republican senators and one with 2 or 3 Democratic senators, and people who looked absolutely non-Arab, non-Muslim, non-minority even, screaming their lungs saying, say it's a genocide. Where do you stand on what is going on in Gaza? Also, a lot of people like actors, actresses, music industry people, people who are usually shy from coming near anything Arab or Muslim are actually like vocally. And then there are at least 32 or 33 representatives and maybe a few senators that are saying things out loud, and actually they wanted to pass a resolution to stop selling dangerous weapons to Israel. So don't you see that there is a rapid change also in America when it comes to the Palestinian cause and conflict and like the other side of what is going on in Palestine faster than before?
Yeah, I mean, of course, because people now just can't ignore. I mean, it's so obvious. It's basically a lot of these people that grew up in this country post World War II and for years have been taught that what happened in the Holocaust is horrific. It's the most evil thing that has ever happened, and the Nazis are the most evil people. I remember growing up in high school, and every year, I went to high school here in America. And every year around a Holocaust remembrance, we would have an assembly, an entire assembly, where somebody that would come and speak to us about the Holocaust to the entire student body. And so we grew up, and just like other Americans, grew up with this idea that this is the most evil thing, to treat people like that, to put them in concentration camps, to massacre them. So Americans innately, when they see what's happening in Gaza, they're against it. The problem is a lot of people were not seeing what was happening, or there was this, misdirection and misinformation campaign to keep them confused about what's happening in Gaza. But now it's become really obvious, especially now as more and more even mainstream media outlets are reporting about the violence against the children and the starvation and the death of these people that are just simply trying to go get some aid. Even the New York Times and the Washington Post is covering it. So people are just saying this is wrong. A lot of Jewish people are saying this is wrong. So the only people that keep justifying this, they're either still really dumb or they're not really paying attention to what's happening, or they're just really evil because no one can justify what's happening to the Palestinians.
Especially children and
especially children. But it's also women. It's also men. Like, what's wrong with men? Like killing innocent men that are not armed. That's also not justified. And now in Gaza, they have the most child amputees worldwide ever in history. So many, like thousands of children are just without limbs and already without parents and now without limbs. How are they going to, what are they going to do in the future? And now the whole, basically Gaza Strip that was full of life, full of buildings, full of homes. Hundreds of thousands of homes have been turned into rubble. Like more than 80% of all the buildings have been completely wiped out. If you look at it, it looks like Armageddon. It looks like something out of the movies. Mm-hmm. You've never seen anything like that, not even in World War II. And then so people see that and say, no, absolutely not. What Israel is doing is evil. And it's not because Jews are evil. It's because this government, what they're doing is an evil. And it needs to stop. And unfortunately, somehow, Democrats and Republicans and the administration in Washington keeps justifying it or saying, well, Israel is our ally. And that's what you're hearing in these town halls. Somehow say, well, Israel is surrounded by people that want to annihilate them, and people are not buying it anymore. Israel is one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and they're nuclear. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's is staunch. People are just like, she's saying it's a genocide, and AIPAC is going after her. So now there's this crack in the MAGA movement itself, within the Trump universe, within Trump supporters. They're saying, you know what? We're supposed to be America first, not Israel first. Why are all these politicians making everything about Israel? And if you're doing that, then you're not really a true MAGA or true Republican or a true America first. And this is causing alarms within pro-Israel groups.
Yeah, but not that they genuinely like the Palestinians or the Muslims, because, they are, I don't want to generalize, but like if you look at Marjorie's feed 2 and 3 and 4 years ago, quite racist and quite Islamophobic.
Still is, but it's not because they don't want all this money going to Israel.
Yeah,
they don't want all this funding and
or to
things to be dictated, or to Ukraine. They're consistent. They're saying, you know what, they can take care of themselves. They're not against Israel, but they're saying Israel doesn't need our help. Why is America paying for their weapons? They have plenty, and what are they? They're basically shooting fish in a barrel. These people are trapped. They can't go anywhere, and they don't have any weapon, they don't have any fighter jets, tanks, or anything. So why do they need so much American firepower to do all of this? And America is paying for it, and we have to borrow money from all over the world to be able to send money. We can't even have a deficit like we have now, and we have to keep borrowing money. But one group that we keep sending the money is Israel, but we can't somehow help our seniors or our homeless or people in this country, or even our vets, military vets in this country, but somehow we can send billions of dollars to Israel. People are against that, and it doesn't make sense.
I just saw, because we're running out of time, just saw a vet in my town, and I stopped to give him some money, and I said, he looked not too old and not too young, and he said, I served in Kuwait. I said, I was born in Kuwait, and he said, I liberated your country. I said, okay, I don't have the citizenship of Kuwait, but and like the guy is begging. I gave him, I'm not sure how much I gave him, but it was like a very surreal moment, really. He served in Kuwait, and I was born in Kuwait, and I had to give him money because he can't survive, and he's on a wheelchair. But Ahmed, I want to read an email that came, and it says, Dear Samar, dear Ahmed, please be well. I have loved and respected your vision to share with our community. I have never missed a show since early 2015. The first time I enjoyed your music choice and heard your voice, I was a fan. Great gratitude for your wisdom and love. Samar, with her long haul on I-75, I salute your giving heart. I loved Mr. Rob Lorai. Radioactivity was a super thoughtful daily dose nourishment. I had True Talk, please stay more stronger. And thanks trillions. So this is from Larry. Very nice gratitude. And I know there are people on the phone who wanted to say something, but really I wanted Ahmed and I to have this conversation. I just need to make sure that I do not endorse any negativity towards anybody if any of the callers said anything. Ahmed, we're almost running out of time, but you and I are planning to be here for a while. You're not traveling anymore, are you?
Not that soon. I actually like traveling, so I.
Oh, no, you like traveling because you used to criticize me. Why do you travel all the time?
But now I'm at the age where I like to travel.
Oh my gosh! So I am 10 years older, I think.
Why are you telling your age to the?
I didn't say my age. I just said I'm older than you. That's all I said.
Yes.
Okay, so now you. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'll be here next week. But even if I'm not, we can connect remotely as long as one of us is in this, here. So it's
it's always more logical for you to be in the studio because I don't have to drive 2 hours to be here. It's faster for you. But anyways, Ahmed, we're running out of time, and I want to thank you for being my co-host on WMNF. And thank you, WMNF, for having this great show. The Scoop is coming next, and this is WMNF Tampa.